space, justice is a long way away.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
The infinite wealth was all the friends we made along the way.
Are you done with it? Did you finish it?
I finished the main story, and I'm now in the post-game.
Wow.
Of course, there's more.
How many hours did that take to get to finish it?
Oh, around 180 hours, but I was taking my time and doing a lot of stuff.
Right, but I mean...
I was doing a lot of side content.
Right, but from whatever indication I've heard is that the game is a lot bigger than Like a Dragon. So that tracks.
Oh, yeah.
That totally tracks. What were you going to say, Jacob? Sorry to interrupt.
No, I am going to say that Twitch seems to be having a moment.
Does it?
Oh, no, it's working.
Oh, good. Okay.
It took it a second.
Let's see. All right. Your co-host, Julie.
Hello from the sunny, warm north where we haven't had to shovel snow in weeks.
In February.
Spring is now 2 months early. Also joining us is your co-host, Thorsten.
Welcome to our most complicated topic yet.
Is it? Maybe. I don't know.
One of the more complicated ones we've covered.
Yeah, probably.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know.
Sure.
Usually we get a little simpler, but today's a little complicated. Also, your co-host, Jacob.
Didn't you read our manual?
And your co-host, David.
There's Earl Grey, and here I am drinking some liver tea.
You're welcome. Anyway, so friends, first off, let me apologize for no show last week. I was so effing tired. It wouldn't have been fun for anyone. So I apologize for skipping last week. That happens sometimes, I find, as I get older. I'm trying to exercise more and be more energetic, so hopefully that works. But yeah, I was so tired. So I apologize for that last week. But we have a topic this week that originated from a stream we did about a month ago-ish, 2 months ago, roughly within the last 2 months, for a game called, I believe it was The Planet Crafter, right?
Yes.
And the title is a lie because you are not crafting planets. The planet is already crafted. It's already there.
You are crafting on planets.
Yeah, you're crafting on the planet. You're dealing with the aftermath of a planet being crafted, basically. And Spaz and I got into I won't say heated, but a lively debate. Lively debate. Yes, thank you. That's a good way to put it. Lively debate about how much information a game should provide in the game. Now, as games have gotten, wholly digital and more complex, a lot of games rely more on, a lot of games have tutorials, sure, but a lot of games also rely on external wikis and things like that, like Dwarf Fortress is a great example of that. And I kind of lambasted Planet Crafter because it didn't have even, I felt, what should have been the most basic of information. Like, I believe it's No Man's Sky, when you walk away from your base and whatnot, you still have a little indicator as to where all your stuff is. And this game didn't even have that. And that was jarring and annoying. And it made me think, I'm in a spacesuit from an advanced spaceship. Why don't I have a compass pip pointing me to where my escape pod is? That sort of thing. I felt the most basic information. And Spaz, I believe your counterpoint was that in certain types of survival games, it is expected to give the player as little information as possible to make it more of a challenge.
It's not just that it makes it more of a challenge. It's for a game like The Planet Crafter. Okay, let's compare that to, say, a game like Astroneer. Astroneer skews toward a more casual audience with a lot of its players because of its aesthetic. They know a lot of people will be playing it with their kids. Therefore, they know that for onboarding, they have to make things as simple as possible in terms of using more iconography, and including that information in the game, like what planets have which kinds of minerals you can harvest, or which kind of gases you can harvest. And the reason why they put that in the game directly is because they know people are going to be playing with their kids. So that kind of onboarding makes sense. But if you take a game like, say, The Planet Crafter, or to use a more extreme example, something like Dwarf Fortress, they have survival elements, but there is so much of a different expectation of the player base the developers are aiming for. Right. The amount of complexity and detail needed. There's too much granularity to say, well, we can have all of this in the game. Maybe you can, but a lot of hardcore players aren't going to want that. They don't want hand-holding. And so for you, Brian, taking it from the perspective of someone who plays more casually, and you also go into games blind, that leaves it with, if the information isn't in the game, it may as well not exist. Or, as I've seen other people streaming, they'll see a whole bunch of text for in-game tutorials and help, and they'll say, that's too much reading, I'm not reading that. And then they close the tutorial and then try to figure it out.
It's funny.
I've seen it go the other way too.
It's funny you bring that up. I have Starfleet 2 streaming in the back because that's an example of like trying to do everything. It's got in-game tutorials, but it also has a manual, but the tutorials kind of rely on the manual. So it's a little bit of both, but I saw someone play that for the first time. Someone made a YouTube where they played it for the first time, and they had the exact same reaction you just said. They were hit with a wall of text, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not reading all that." And then they just started playing, and I know what Trevor felt like the first time when he watched me playing it for the first time. I knew exactly what Trevor felt like.
Reaction.
Yeah, yeah, because like, oh no, you're supposed to. Oh God. Oh gee. Oh. But he and it made Trevor think, should I put more information in the game telling people this is what you need to do to get, because he can't put the tutorials in the game. It's a DOS game, he only has so much.
It's too, yeah.
But
too big
at the same time, he could put in some text saying you should really do the tutorials. You should really read the manual. We thought we put that in there, but apparently it wasn't enough because he just skipped over all that. And it's like, oh boy. Oh, this is so. So yeah, I think that gentleman had the same kind of reaction that you were talking about, and I felt like it was a similar reaction I had to the Planet Crafter, where it's like, oh, you're just going to throw me into this? Okay, God damn it.
But also consider that for games like the Planet Crafter or Arma, to give some very, very detailed examples, those aren't typically a person's first game.
That's true.
A casual player doesn't simply jump into something like that blind. If they're going to play a game like that, or DCS, or Microsoft Flight Simulator, they're going to actually do some research beforehand, have an idea of what they're getting themselves into. They're not going to jump in blind.
That's true.
Or at least they shouldn't. So
they shouldn't. They absolutely shouldn't. And so the way you approach games for our streams is representative of someone who is going in blind, but not necessarily representative of someone who has experience with the genre and knows what they're getting into every time they go into a game. For some, that works. For others, it doesn't.
So, I mean, I guess my issue is, should the developer even try to cater to someone like me by adding more player aids? Or do they stay true to their vision of a more hardcore experience for the more experienced, like in this case, survival game player, and just forget it? We're just aiming right for the hardcore. Forget you noobs.
If I may,
of course.
Going back to grad school, the guy who taught marketing was director of marketing for Motorola. And the thing is, the thing that he always used to say, and this feeds into why it's important for game developers and a game company to understand their audience. And it was just on the other show, we talked about some game developer who just said the reason there's problems is because gamers don't understand game development and it's all your fault. And that's just nothing but an excuse. What's important is to understand your audience, and good marketing, what he always used to say, is making your product meet the needs of the consumer. So it's important to know that if your audience is primarily, like Spaz says, people who are playing this with your game, with your children, that you're going to have to onboard them and explain everything and lead them by the hand. On the other hand, if you're playing something like we have a static group like Final Fantasy 14 on Sunday nights, and anytime we do a new dungeon, the first thing people ask is, did you watch the video? Because otherwise, in some of the higher level dungeons, you're going to be lost, and it's not expected that anything like that's going to be in game. So I think the good deciding factor is understanding your audience, who's buying your game, who's playing your game. This is why community managers exist.
Been there, done that.
And I
mean, I wrote the tutorial for Quintet, and I have been its community manager since, well, let's see, it's 10 years. Even though there's not very much of a community right now, the fact is I've still been there. So, having been on that side, I can safely say that if you know your audience and the audience is the kind of audience you're catering towards, then they'll help each other out when there are things like onboarding that haven't necessarily been explained in game, but have been obscured or omitted specifically so that there is some sense of discovery for the players that are coming in. Now, some need more help, more onboarding help than others, and that's where the community is supposed to help bring them in and grow the player base.
Well,
but go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, see, the flip side of that kind of thing that I've seen is I played EVE Online for 6 years, and people say, oh, you were just a casual player. I said, no, we did zero security space in the whole 9 yards, and I was the industry part of it. But it's expected that this game is in so much depth that you're going to need a lot of help. And a lot of corporations like ours said, okay, we're going to help you with this and this and this and this. But when the community says we need help with this, and since I know I can swear with this on this show, is what irritates me is when the community does ask for something and devs at CCP not only just say good, but they just say, they make a little song that says harden the fuck up. And now that the company has been sold, I say, who has to harden the fuck up? Now, sometimes you really need to listen to your audience, because people used to say, well, you know, all the people who are the gankers are running out of victims. Well, you have to understand, sometimes people want to get into something that's been established for a while. I experienced this with EVE Online, but with the EverQuest games. You know, the game has been out for a long time and there's nobody in the lower levels to help you. So you gotta find somebody who can help you. And I don't expect the instructions to be in game. But what I don't want to deal with is, now I understand it's an old game, but when I went into Ultima Online and I stood there for the first day and I said, well, what do I do? And they said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I need a little help. And somebody took me under their wings. So the players are sometimes really important, but I don't think your developers can always just count on, well, the other players will help you.
The community, of course. There are some communities that are very dedicated to. This is why community discords exist, where they help the other players, new players, get in, and so if a thing is not explained in the game, they have a place to turn. Something we brought up before the show is that one of the reasons why physical manuals are no longer a going concern is because if a game gets balance patches, that can render anything that's in print obsolete from the moment the patch goes out. And if you're looking at a print manual for a game that's 10 years old, and it was printed 10 years ago, and there have been months and months worth of patches since then, how much of that print book is going to still be accurate? It's one of the reasons why online guides are the main source. Player-made guides even are a main source of information, or wikis that are player-run are a main source of information for things. Even when there is plenty of in-game information, sometimes you need something very specific that would not be included, say quest help. And you have to look outside the game because nobody in the game is going to tell you necessarily.
You know, I understand. I appreciate.
Julie, we can't hear you.
Sorry, it's this headset. I appreciate what No Man's Sky does in the beginning, and say they approach onboarding somebody through quests and say, okay, and here's what your journey is to start out with. And I understand it's going to get more complex. And in Eaglesoft and the X4 Foundations has in-game explanations that way. But I understand that it's going to get a lot more complex and a lot faster. And this is why I congratulate Eaglesoft for having such a wonderful Discord that they sponsor, because I have yet not to have my questions answered. And I know largely it's because their community is so helpful, but still, you know, I've seen examples where people say, well, we have Discord. I say, well, then why isn't it on your game someplace? And yet there's other games I've played that say, yes, we have a Discord. Here it is. Come join us.
I think a game that did this well, I played it this morning, was that Imperium's game. Because not only does it have a ton of information inside the game, like it's not a wiki, but it's like kind of a in-game manual. It also has a link in the main menu to the PDF manual, which is very long and comprehensive. And it also has a tutorial that lasts almost an hour. It's got quite a bit of onboarding help because it's a pretty complex game, and I think if it can even help an idiot like me learn how to play it, I think it did a good job. But I think maybe again they know their audience. You know, that's the thing. Maybe because it definitely leans more on the side of more complex 4X than your typical, and so maybe they understand that. I don't know. It just bugs me when a game like it. I don't know if I'm gonna say it's lazy, but going back to like Planet Crafter, the fact that it didn't even have what I felt should have been some of the most basic information a space suit game should have just still bugs me. Like I'm in a spacesuit. I should have a certain amount of information on a HUD on my helmet or something. Or but I didn't even have that.
I think that's it's an expectation of how you prefer games to be played, because to an extent, and this is a point I'd made in previous shows, that one of the things that has it's made gamers a little bit, I don't want to use the word stupid, but I think that less willing to explore for the sake of exploring is the way that Skyrim will put map markers for everything. And I mean everything. So you just passed within 20 meters of a place, you get a map marker there.
I love
So
that.
yeah, you could
I
explore them.
love that.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's the problem with that. When you have that, it sets an expectation of if you have a quest, there's going to be a map marker.
Right.
So yes, that means that things will be somewhat easy. But here's the side problem with that is there's environmental storytelling that you can do that doesn't require a map marker for every damn thing. And Generation Zero is a good example of that, where they'll tell you, you get a clue. Look, you explore the site, you get a clue. It's something's in this direction, but they don't tell you exactly where, because people are spoiled by map markers everywhere.
Well, I think I'm going to be honest. I think Generation Zero sets up a better expectation of that sort of thing. Like I was looking at the the Steam page for the Planet Crafter, just as like because I read it before I played it, and I'm like, did I miss something where it tells you it's all hardcore and you're not going to have a lot of and the Steam page does not tell you much about the game. Like I think if the Steam page maybe had a little more text about this is a hardcore game, and you're going to have little information and you're going to have to find your own way. Maybe I would have gone in there with a different expectation. You know what I mean? But it mentions nothing about that. And maybe they don't feel they need to. I'm not a developer. I don't know. But if it were me making a hardcore game with and I've seen other Steam pages do this where it's like, this is a hard game. You don't have map markers. You're gonna have to find your own stuff. I've seen other games say that on their Steam page. I'm like, okay, thanks for telling me that. I appreciate the heads up. But I know I'm giving the Planet Crafter a lot of crap. It's not a bad game, folks. I just want to say that off the bat. It's not a bad game. It's
a bad game for the way that you play games.
Yeah, it's a good game. It does what it says in the tin, but at the same time, I think if there had been one more paragraph saying this is a hardcore game, we give you as little information as possible, and we expect you to find stuff on your own. Be like, okay, at least I know that going in. You know what I mean? At least I know going in that this is going to be challenging. That's fine. But there are I don't know. It doesn't really. I can't watch the trailer right now, obviously, but the text on the Steam page doesn't even lean into any kind of setting an expectation. And maybe that's another important thing that needs to be done on the behalf of the developer is set an expectation for the player. Because the Steam page is a bit bare bones. It does not tell you much. Go ahead.
A good example, and this goes back to when I believe the guy's first. I know his first nickname is Rocket, and I think the last name is Hall. But when Rocket Hall was, and correct me if I'm wrong, was involved with DayZ still, and he was on the other show, and on the show he would pointed this out, and it was, I don't know if it still is there, but when you would go out to play the game, it was emblazoned all over the page is that the average life expectancy of any character with permadeath and in a game with that's permadeath is 90 minutes. And that was I expected it to be hard. And so, I didn't complain when I died all the time. But on the other hand, after a while, without a lot of in-game help, it kind of got daunting.
Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing. On the Steam page for DayZ, the first sentence says, there are no map markers, daily quests, or scoreboards to help you create your story. I'm like, oh, well, he kind of set an expectation right from jump.
Yeah, exactly.
Right there.
It sets your expectations very, very clearly.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And I think the Planet Crafter page, and again, not to shit too much on the Planet Crafter, it's a good game, but I think if I had read that on the Planet Crafter page before playing it, I'd be like, oh, okay. All right. I know going in that this is going to be this is more challenging than my usual, but they didn't do that. And Oh, there are a lot of people playing DayZ right now. Do you know?
Just wanted to
Good.
I just wanted to do a kind of little shout out to another member of the show because we were talking about, instructions in game, and Pal World has instructions in game.
Pal World,
But
that new Pokemon game. Okay.
Yes, and I know a lot of people. There's some controversy, but I think the controversy is more made up by media than it really is, because if Nintendo doesn't care and they have lawyers on speed dial who just love to come down on people, if they
Well,
don't care what, should
I
anybody
think
else?
I think the other controversy about that game is that the CEO of the company that makes it was very vocal in being pro AI art.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Which is not
But
great. Anyway.
I just wanted to say that sometimes when you're playing a game, if you get stuck, what's really nice is to have someone like Devil D that you can just say, I'm stuck. I need help.
Right. So I guess a question then is, in this day and age, should developers expect that there's a community that players can rely on for information, or should they supply that information themselves? Does that make any sense?
It depends on the game.
I guess it depends on the game.
Their target. It depends on the game, the target audience. Some are more, let's say, the Vampire Survivors like games. There are plenty of wikis and such for those, not necessarily because they need them, but because there are unlock requirements for certain characters that or for certain weapons, challenges, that kind of thing, where people will say, okay, this is information that's not going to be in the game, so we'll provide it so that other people who will be looking for this will have that information. The community supports the game by putting that there, and so people who need that info have a place to look for it. But it's never going to be put directly in the game, because why would you give away all your secrets, so to speak, as a developer? It doesn't make sense to do it to put everything in the game for that. Onboarding and approachability are separate from the target audience in this case. Because if your target audience is someone like the hardcore Arma community, you're not going to put everything in the game. You're going to expect them to do their own research.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
You're going to expect them to go into it with an expectation of what they are in for and what information they need to know in order to have a viable experience, a viable gaming experience. People don't just fire up Arma for the first time as their very first game. They just don't.
Some people do.
Some people do, specific... but they are very they're already in that ecosystem if they do.
Yeah, typically it's done because someone else convinced them to do so, and that someone else can typically just hover around them and tell them, hey, do that thing that way.
Yeah, but they don't buy it blind and play it. That's what I'm getting at, is they're not going to just buy it blind and play a game that they know is not targeted for them, or necessarily have an idea is not targeted for them.
Jacob, let me ask you something. Go ahead, Thorsten. Go ahead.
I want to stay for a short time with Planet Crafter because that's an interesting example in my opinion. I've played the demo first, and by playing the demo, I really found out very early that this game isn't for me. It's as you said, it's not a bad game.
Wait, which game, Thorsten? Sorry, which game, Thorsten?
Planet Crafter. I'm still speaking about Planet Crafter. And
Planet Crafter. Right. Sorry.
Yeah. And now I lost.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to. I'm so sorry.
Played the tutorial and you decided that it wasn't for you.
No, I played the demo.
Oh, the demo. Excuse me.
That is the demo version of it, and I really found out very early that this game wasn't for me. Um, so sometimes a demo might help more to decide if a game is for you or not, and if the information for you available is enough in game.
I have to say, on a side note, tangent, I am honestly loving this resurgence of demos that we've been seeing lately, these last few years. Because
I love it.
Oh yes,
they were gone for like forever. They were just gone. You know, they weren't demos for anything. And then Steam decided to do Next Fest, and suddenly there's a zillion demos, but it's great. It's just so great for everyone.
yeah, I'm very glad that they're back.
Yeah, I mean,
Just a side note on demos, real quick.
Yeah.
That some people complain about. Well, the demo's available only during the Next Fest, and then it's gone.
that's the
Well,
point.
yeah, there's a reason for that.
That's the-
There's a reason for that. If a game is still in development, they put out a demo so that you can have an idea of how the game is doing at that time. If there's more development to be done, it's going to render that demo obsolete, and people are going to play it and say, "Wait, this doesn't look like the game that I was playing."
Oh, I've seen that happen so
And-
many times.
Oh,
It's not like the demo. Well, I mean, the demo was made a year ago. What do you want? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
but I have actually a negative example of that, and that is a Space Mechanic Simulator, which I loved as demo, but the final version is.
that's weird. that's usually it doesn't go that way, but all right.
Yeah, usually it's the other way around.
But I mean, we had developers on our Discord talking about how great demos are for engagement, you know, and they're just apparently wonderful. So I remember demos back in the day when you get a disc with a magazine, you're like, oh, I could play 10 demos this month, you know. It's so great. So yeah, we love demos. Demos are great for everyone. Jacob, since you're here, I wanted to ask you something
I'm listening.
regarding DCS.
Oh boy.
Now, I think I touched DCS once, and that was like years ago. So I don't know if it's different, but there is no, if I remember correctly, there is no any kind of in-game tutorial for anything in that game. Am I remembering that correct? Is it still?
That is not necessarily correct.
Okay. So
Because
okay, I'm curious.
tutorials, it's weird because there isn't a tutorial for the game itself, but there are separate tutorials for every single aircraft, and they are designed by whoever ported over and made the actual aircraft in the game, because again it has a lot of these are third party, which means that tutorials exist, but they're of extremely varying quality. For example, tutorials for the F-14 Tomcat and anything by Heat Plus, so the F-14 Tomcat, the Viggen, and the soon coming F-4 Phantom, brilliant, absolutely spectacular stuff. No questions asked. You could sit in a real plane and fly it after like an hour. They're that good.
Wow.
Others vary in terms of usefulness, and there's of course the issue that each of these is a study level aircraft that has all the clicky buttons and switches, and a lot of them aren't really necessary for DCS Simulate. Because in a lot of aircraft, half the study procedure is check if the thing that's supposed to be working is working. And the game doesn't really simulate a thing that isn't supposed to be working randomly not working. Or at least it shouldn't. It doesn't do that intentionally, I'll put it that way. There is some occasional shenaniganry. There are times where your missiles just decide to quit on the job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, occasionally I have had seen many a time where a perfectly launched missile just decided, nope, I'm not tracking. I'm just going that way. Bye.
Well, that's encouraging to hear that something as hardcore as DCS. Because if I recall correctly, the IL-2 games do not have any kind of tutorial at all.
I don't actually recall one either. And okay, they sort of do in the same way that they have some tutorials that teach you how to fly an aircraft or like a specific aircraft, but they do so very poorly and it's weirdly inaccessible for some reason.
Yeah, I don't. Okay,
and honestly, they may as well not have.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay, I didn't know those existed. I must not have been able to find them because I
don't blame you because I remember not being able to find them for months.
Months. Oh, that's great. I mean, things like
I learned the vast majority of my IL-2 from YouTube videos and actually reading manuals.
So I wonder if that's a thing we've also come to rely on these days is people making videos on YouTube as the replacement for a lot of information. I mean, YouTube
or Steam guides.
Yeah, or Steam guides
and wikis. Yeah.
Yeah, there is the issue. I mean, DCS, as I mentioned, has a similar problem actually. While nominally every module comes with a manual, there is this fella the players all know and love called Chuck. Chuck makes Chuck's guide to each of the plays in DCS. And they're basically some of the best and most comprehensive manuals I have ever seen.
Wow. Are these these video guides or are they textual guides?
Nope, they're PDF manuals. You can print them out, and some people do.
Holy crap. That's a lot of work.
It is, and the man has done the work for every single plane in the game so far, including the obscure ones that no one flies.
Oh my god. I mean, damn, that's again relying on the community, but that's great. That's great.
Yep.
I guess another difference between now and back then, like Starfleet and Gunship and whatnot, is there wasn't really a community. Like there was, but there wasn't. Like you might be able to find a community on CompuServe if you were lucky enough to have a 300 baud modem.
Yeah, it's not like people who played video games went outside and went into, cafes and such to talk about video games.
And if they did if they did back then, they wouldn't find anyone because far fewer people were playing video games back then. But I guess that's kind of the crux is that we've come to rely a lot more on communities than we ever have before for this sort of thing. Which is not a bad thing. It makes me wonder how much onus should be put on the developer then to provide information. Like, is it up to the developer or is it up to the community these days?
It is difficult to say. To quote, the developer of Delta V, who when he showed up on the podcast, you could theoretically do infinite tutorializing.
That's true.
Because that is true. You can theoretically tutorialize every single thing in the game, but there is both an upper and a lower limit to what can be considered sensible and reasonable.
Yeah.
And it's hard to determine and quantify what exactly that would make.
Yeah, it is tough. I think a good example of someone doing it right is probably Distant Worlds 2, because every screen has that kind of guide that'll tell you what everything is, but it's optional and you can turn it off. But it also has the in-game encyclopedia as well for you to refer to. A lot of
the times, I feel like the big thing with tutorializing is the optionality. That theoretically should be a tutorial on everything, but only if the player wants it.
You know what? There should be.
There are games that. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it should be on everything. Everything that. Even if there's no tutorial, these things will help. Tooltips. Every fucking thing.
True.
Goddamn tooltips
on everything.
Fucking everything. Tooltips on every goddamn thing. Developers, if you're hearing me, all the fucking tooltips.
If your game is at all mouse-based, based on clicking interface commands, tooltips on bloody well everything. Tooltips.
Have you seen the tooltips for Old World? There are.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, they're stacked. They have tooltips among tooltips that lead to other tooltips that you can pin, so you can have those tooltips up. It's fucking
perfect.
Insane.
No notes. It's beautiful. All the tooltips, please.
It's beautiful. It makes me cry. It's so beautiful. That's the best tooltips implementation I have ever seen. Yeah, developers. Even if you don't tutorialize everything, fucking tooltip everything. Jeez, oh my god, I can't emphasize this enough. My god. I I don't think Planet Crafter. I'm going back to this game because it's kind of the it's the impetus for this whole episode. I don't think that had tooltips, did it? Not many. I don't think.
Oh, really?
As I saw.
Huh?
Very little as I saw.
Yeah, I don't think it had many tooltips. And again, it's in early access, I think. Right?
Yes,
Still
I
in early
was
access.
going to continue a thought because
Go ahead.
there are because speaking of the thing about tutorials is you can again tutorialize everything, but there is also a lower limit on how much you should tutorialize. I kind of actually stumbled upon this recently with Helldivers 2, which, while a great game, has a mild problem with just not telling you a bunch of really important stuff and controls. Like, for example, it just doesn't. There is an entire mechanic where you can like hold the reload button to check how many to both check how many rounds you have in a magazine and also readjust things like fire modes and rate of fire on machine guns and even scopes. It's basically your like big weapon adjustment button, and the game never tells you it's there.
Oh, so
the game has an actual full-on tutorial.
That sounds like something. That sounds like very gamepad centric controls right there. A button that does multiple things.
It is,
and that's
but
fine.
It also doesn't tell you. Like, I would like to have known that that's a button. Or, for example, there's a dedicated going prone button, and that I don't have to do a swan dive every time I want to drop to the floor. I probably will, but it's nice having the option.
Well, it looks so cool. Getting your face into a rock afterward.
It's nice that it's nice to know that I'm making a choice to do a magnificent face first swan dive into the ground every time. I'm wondering if that's every time I do so.
I'm wondering if that's a specific choice with that game, because that the people who made that game, they want you to. I think they want you to fuck up because it's funny, and the less they tell you, the more likely you are to fuck up. Excuse my language, but
True. Though there is some other obscure stuff. The big thing I dislike, and this is partially a general issue that I can sort of break down. If you have statistics on like weapons or items and such, and the game never explains to you what those statistics exactly do.
What?
Yeah, in Helldivers, for example, you have things like armor penetration on weapons, which goes light, medium, and presumably heavy. It never tells you what is light armor, medium armor, or heavy armor. It also has some certain weapons with the explosive tag. It doesn't tell you what that tag does besides exploding, which sometimes it also doesn't explode.
Can confirm.
Oh boy.
And there's all kinds of stuff that the game just does not tell you, which is very annoying. Because the only way because it's not like something that you just figure out by trial and error. You have to figure it out by doing an entire scientific method of dropping into a mission and then figuring out if the weapon does more damage or if the weapon does less damage against certain stuff. Or, for example, if your armor actually reduces damage by a meaningful amount or if it does not. It's nuts.
I just thought like the opposite type of thing was like Titanfall 2, where it spent like the whole first level explaining just about every goddamn thing. So you'd be prepared for what's ahead. It sounds like it's the opposite of that.
Yeah, again, both have their own problems. And while in the end, I prefer information to be there, even if it's annoying, rather than not be there.
I mean, that's
my preference.
It sounds like it's not holding you back from enjoying the game, ultimately.
No, it's not. It's just fiddly and requires a lot of asking and experimenting.
Maybe that's what they want.
I guess so.
But they didn't tell you.
Nope, they did not tell me. Like, could you be a bit more clear, please, with your intent?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's another thing. Like, when you're making a game, a creative endeavor like this, I guess it could be hard to remember to tell your audience some things. You know what I mean? Like, you get lost in the making of the thing. You forget who you're making it for and what to tell them. You know what I mean? I think that might be a possibility. You know, because
I'm not so sure on that one, because Well, if you're making a game, you generally know what audience you're aiming for from the get-go.
Right, but I'm saying it's so easy to get wrapped up in the minutia of making a game, you might forget to tell players a certain thing. You know what I mean? It's not. I'm not saying it's a malicious or intended thing. It's just especially with smaller teams and single developers. Like I don't know how many people worked on Planet Crafter, but I'm sure multiple people worked on Helldivers. And
Certainly.
And just part of me wonders if like that's the thing, like the stuff that Jacob is saying they didn't include. Did they forget? Did they forget to put it in there because they were working on something else? You know what I mean? I don't know. It's
a fair question. I don't know the answer. I mean,
I don't either, but it just seems like the information that Jacob just said the game doesn't tell you seems like a weird amount of information to not have.
While simultaneously over explaining other stuff in some ways.
Oh, really?
It's inconsistent. And I guess that's my biggest problem at this point with tutorials. The worst thing you can do with a tutorial is being consistent.
Yeah.
In either direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're the sort of tutorial that sets yourself up as telling you everything, then if you don't tell the player something, they're gonna go, "Why didn't you tell me that?" And then if you don't say anything, then the player has to figure everything out. And if then you suddenly start over explaining something, it's like, go away. You
too much information.
Too much information. Me into this pool. Thank you very much. You threw me off the deep end. Don't try and teach me how to swim now. Don't throw the freaking floaties at me. I know how to swim already.
I really appreciated the Evercron Legacy tutorial when right in the beginning they're like, "Hey, this is going to take about 2 hours, and we're going to tell you just about everything, but it's going to take about 2 hours." Like, oh Jesus, okay. Maybe that's the crux. Maybe setting up the expectation is the real crux of the problem. Like,
I mean, there's so much they can put in and out of game, and some players are still going to be lost, or they're going to go in with an expectation that is unrealistic. I'll give an example from one of your streams. Starship Troopers RTS.
I knew you were gonna fucking bring up Starship Troopers.
Well, yeah, because it makes sense. It fits in with the topic.
Yeah, folks, if you didn't watch
I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
Okay, so there's a Starship. Okay, go ahead, Spaz.
Yeah, so the Starship Troopers RTS uses mostly standard RTS mechanics. The one thing that it does do that most RTS games don't is that fields of fire are important to be maintained. And if you have troops in front of other troops, they will not fire through them.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes total sense from a gameplay standpoint, but it got Brian's hackles very much raised because he expected it to be like any other RTS where that is not an issue.
Yeah.
It set a wrong expectation because he went in thinking this is like any other RTS. Why is it not working this way?
Yeah.
And I could see your frustration, but it was very clear on the store page that you do have to watch your fields of fire. That's on the store page that you cannot fire through your, So
I've always wondered whether I should go back and give that game another whirl on a stream because I feel kind of bad about that one. To be perfectly honest, I feel like I quit before I should have. I don't know. It's not a bad game. I just didn't treat it properly. On a kind of a similar note, like with that Stargate game recently, like the Steam page didn't really explain that it's a Commando style stealth game. I found that out through the Steam reviews.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought it was an XCOM like.
That's what I thought too, but no, it is a.
most of
That's
the
what a lot of people thought.
That's what a lot of people thought. And then the reviews were like, this is a stealthy stealth game. I'm like, oh, really? And
That's not bad. It's also not what I was buying.
it's not bad. I thought once I had that expectation, I had a really good time going in. I mean, I played it on baby level, I know, but I still like knowing what it was from jump. You know, I had a much.
It did make it easier to get onboarded, and the fact that I was helping you through it also.
That also did help, yeah. But I think the big thing is setting the proper expectation, and maybe that's my big takeaway from all this. Like, I don't think Planet Crafter set a proper expectation, but I again, the Stargate game also didn't set a proper expectation, but because of reading reviews, I had my expectation changed, and and it worked out much better. And I had much more fun with that one than I did. I feel like I should revisit. What do you think, Spaz? Should I revisit Starship Troopers, the Starship Troopers game?
I think you have too many other games on the backlog at the moment. When things calm down a bit, then maybe.
Yeah. Oh, calm down. Do you know how long the list is? It's so fucking long.
I know it's a long list. It's one of the other reasons we haven't been doing multiplayer streams is because of too much backlog.
It's
you didn't even do flight simulators for a year or so.
Yeah, I think doing the flight sims are what killed it. But I kind of don't mind that because it was kind of a nice break for my brain, you know? So I think it worked.
I have a quick question for you then.
Go for it.
All right, here's the thing is when you have a game that a lot of people who are seasoned players of the type, for example, Total War, they expect their audience to be a seasoned player who really knows the game. Mm-hmm. But then you come out with something, say, Total War Warhammer, and I say, I've never played a game like this before, but I'm a real Warhammer fan. And how much responsibility then does the developer have to, like, say, warn someone that say, well, you might not like this game, you might have a difficult time with this game, or try and onboard someone who's new to that type of game? Where does the line draw, and what kind of responsibility do you think the developer has?
I think a lot of the onus is on the developer to either on the Steam store page or in their trailers or something clearly say this is a game for Total War players. This is a game for Warhammer players. I think it's also.
I'm not sure on that one, Brian.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Let me explain here.
Okay.
The reason I say I'm not so sure they should do that is because if they overcorrect on how much they try to warn the player, they might turn off people who have played their other games and know what they're getting into. And if they read, well, why are you patronizing us? We know what we're getting if we're buying a Total War game.
Okay. So go ahead.
There's a balance to be struck, but I don't know where that line is.
Well, I guess go ahead, Thurston.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, on the very least on the Steam page or on the homepage, maybe you outline everything the game offers as clearly as you can to help inform the potential player of what they're getting into. Maybe you don't say, oh, this is for Warhammer people or this is for Total War people. Like, clearly outline everything the game does so a potential buyer could be like, okay, it does this, I'm not interested in that sort of thing. Or it does this, I am interested in that sort of thing. Like, give the player as much information about what kind of game they're getting into in turn. Like, I love Steam games that have a lot of text and GIFs and whatnot and bulleted feature lists and all kinds of things. I love lengthy Steam pages that's clearly lay out exactly the type of game that you're getting into here. And I think that onus, at the very least, is on the developer to very, as clearly as they feel they can, explain what the game offers to a player. And then I think at that point, if the player reads all that or looks at the trailer, yada, 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 and they still have questions, they can ask the community. They can watch a Let's Play, that sort of thing. But I think most of the onus is on the developer to, as clearly as possible, explain what their game offers to a potential customer, if that makes sense.
While I do agree very much with you, Brian.
Mhm.
The problem is that it's completely counterintuitive to everything you learn in marketing.
What?
That's the real that's a real problem because you basically close the gap between for buyers. You know,
I'm not.
everyone.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm not following.
Everyone is. If you do that, you basically already quit some people that would probably buy the game, and even if they are not comfortable with the game, then. But I don't know if you get me right now, but you do effectively stop people from buying your game.
So wait, you're saying that if you give the potential customer, more information, you can turn them off from a game?
Probably yes. Again, I'm very much with you on the topic, but it's against anything you learn about marketing.
It's the same mindset of someone opening up a tutorial and seeing a lot of text and saying, "I'm not reading all of that."
But see, here's why I asked the question in the first place. Is I've always been a Warhammer fan ever since the day of I started painting little figurines, right? And played their MMOs and some of their other games. But if I had been told that, well, here's the difficulty, either A, told that warned about the difficulty in advance and saying maybe you should start with some other game we've done, I probably wouldn't have bought the games. But instead I did. And since there was no onboarding, if you're trying to attract a new audience, otherwise your market is just going to be stale at some point. If there had been better onboarding, then I might have gotten more enjoyment out of it, got more into that area of our hobby. But as it was, because neither is true, that put me off from that kind of game for a long time, no matter who made it.
On the other hand, it does support the thing I said before. You bought the game, essentially. Nothing more. It's nothing more important for them.
See, I disagree, because if you depend on just basically hoodwinking your audience into buying a game, no matter whether they'll enjoy it or not, I don't think, no matter what industry you're in, I don't think you're going to last very long as a business.
Well, their target audience is twofold. It's people who like Warhammer, with the Venn diagram crossed over of people who already like Total War games. The problem is, you're not someone who liked Total War games to begin with, so you're only half of the target audience. And they're not going to convert you into someone who likes Total War games, because the Total War game series has been around a long time, and it's an expectation that if you like Total War and you like Warhammer, that's their target audience, not people who only like one but not the other.
Well, see, the reason I said what I just did was in response to what Torsten said, is if somebody thinks my only concern as a developer or having any kind of business is just I sold my product once and that's all it matters, is because, for example, you think about the automobile industry. I've had a Honda Civic that's a 1991 and it's still running like the day I bought it. But if, on the other hand, I buy a car and it's a piece of garbage, I'm going to tell absolutely everybody I know and warn them not to buy this kind of car. And I think that that's what happens no matter what your product is.
The problem is, like Spaz said, you can't compare the two things. I mean, if you buy a car, if you want a sports car or a hyper sports car, and buy instead an SUV, you can tell everyone that the SUV is garbage, but nobody believes you in that case.
Well, see,
At least not those guys that are fans of SUVs.
Otherwise you'll end up with, like, and I wish I could remember the developer said it, but it was some game developer, and I was talking with a friend about it the other day, about basically just said, well, the problem isn't that we haven't done a good job, you just don't understand. I was one of the I think it was somebody from the Bethesda Corporation, but it was saying that you just don't understand the industry, or you don't understand how hard it is to make a game. And it's like the friend said, well, I don't have to know how to assemble a 440 cubic inch blown V8 to know that it's a bad engine if it doesn't start. And so the onus, I think, should be on the developer or whoever's producing what product to have good communication with the market and just say, well, as long as what I disagree with is somebody saying, as long as I've sold at least one of the product, you should keep in mind, and you need to keep your audience, no matter who the audience is, happy.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong, Julie. You are completely right, and I'm fully on board with you. But the problem is essentially that the publishers don't think that way.
From the publisher mindset, a sale is a sale. Yeah. And if people complain, then well, that can be turned into press, because people will still buy the game regardless of whether or not anyone decides they want to boycott or say, oh, this is not the game that you want, or this is not the game I was expecting. It doesn't matter to the publisher as long as the sale is made.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. Now, whether or not we agree is a different thing entirely. But yeah.
I like how we've talked for now over an hour, and we still haven't come to a consensus between all of us.
And there is a reason we can't come to a consensus, is because the line is too nuanced.
If there was a consensus, someone would have figured it out already.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of
I know. I just think it's funny.
If there was a clear-cut solution to how to tutorialize a game, we wouldn't be sitting here.
That's true. I just think it's funny.
Well, this is why when you're interviewing somebody, they say never ask a yes or no question. How interesting would the podcast be if somebody say, okay, we've got figured out in 5 minutes. That's all. Bye.
No, I know. I just think it's funny how, like, after an hour, we're all still kind of like, I don't like it. I like it. You know, I don't feel like my position has moved at all, personally. It is such a nuanced thing. It is such a nuanced thing. I don't think we're gonna come to a consensus, but I guess the best thing we can end with is the fact that there's so many great games out there, and that there's something for everyone, is great. And you just have to know what works for you and what doesn't. I guess it comes down to your personal choices, I guess. Like, I know Dwarf Fortress won't work for me. I know that. That's why I haven't bought it. That's why I'm probably never going to buy it, because I know Dwarf Fortress is not a game for me. But I guess know thyself. I guess that's the thing we got to work. I guess that's the big deal is know yourself. Because I'm not going to play DCS. I'm not going to play Dwarf Fortress. Because I know what I like. So that is the good thing, is that there's something for everyone. And if you want to read a wiki in a little window while you play a game, that's your thing. That's fine. There are some games where I do have a web browser open, like in Steam, to get information like Inquisitor, because on these things called Void Crusades, some people have made up these guides on how to best go through these crusades, and so I have those up. So I do the same thing for certain games. I don't know. I guess I just wish more games would set a better expectation. I guess that's where I fall. What about you guys? Anything to add before we wrap up?
Tutorials are hard to write.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Tutorials and guides are both hard to write.
Yeah,
If you haven't done it, you don't know.
Yeah, no one. We all appreciate when there's a good tutorial. And friends, that's what we're going to talk about next week. We thought we'd bounce off this topic to the topic of good onboarding and tutorialization. And we thought we'd talk about the games we can think of, the games that we love that had good tutorials going in. And not just tutorials, but good onboarding tooltips. Oh my God, tooltips. Good manuals that really helped us get into the game. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. So we're kind of bouncing off this topic onto a similar topic next week. And that should be a little more straightforward. Yeah, this might be like this might be the most nuanced show we've ever had. Like we've talked about many serious topics. We've talked about many serious topics, from accessibility to approach it. We've talked about many serious topics, and yet I think this one might be the most nuanced and nebulous one we've ever had.
Because there are many answers. Yeah,
there's no one answer. That's true. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. And then tomorrow, I'm going to play a game with some good tutorials. Warhammer 40,000 Battle Sector. There's a new Tau expansion for that one. And so that's what we're going to play tomorrow.
Tau.
The party people known as the Tau.
For the greater good.
The greater good. So that's going to do it for today, my friends. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and listening. Great chat as always. Thanks to everyone who's gotten vaccinated, because we live in a goddamn society. If you haven't gotten vaccinated yet, please do so. Please. I shouldn't have to keep saying this, but I'm gonna. Get fucking vaccinated. Get your flu shots. Wear a mask. They work. They all freaking work. The science is there. They work. Oh my God. Why do I have to keep saying this? Maybe one day we'll get out of this pandemic, but it's not today.
This is going to take a while.
It's probably not going to be tomorrow.
Not in my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the pandemic ends in our lifetimes, but who knows? The last one lasted 8 years, roughly, and it's only been 4. So who knows? And that was 100 years ago. So take care of yourselves and others, my friends. Wear your masks. Get your shots. We got to take care of each other if we're going to get through this. Thank you, as always, to our patrons who literally keep the lights on around here. And with that, we'll see you back here tomorrow for some more Warhammer 40,000. Have a